Chapter 286 to 290. In the morning, after eating breakfast, she went downstairs. John Anderson and Helen Anderson were both here. They were both dressed and waiting for her. Helen Anderson cast a cold glare at her. Being late at such a young age, you don't need to learn at all. Instead, you choose the worst. John Anderson said impatiently. Enough, it's already too late. Why are you still picking on her? Helen Anderson said angrily. John Anderson, what's with your attitude? Did you think that, just because your precious daughter became the muss, Walton, you would follow the crow and become the phoenix? Let me tell you, no matter how happy you are, it's useless. In their eyes, you will forever be the backdoor son-in-law of the Anderson family. You will always have to shoulder the debts of the Anderson family. John Anderson was no longer the young him, and he asked coldly, What? You still want to continue fighting with me? She then walked to the sofa and sat down. Helen Anderson pointed at her. Look at your precious daughter. Does she not have the slightest bit of expression that an illegitimate daughter should have? She cast a cold glance at Helen Anderson. If you guys want to argue, then don't bring me along. John Anderson snorted. He could not be bothered to care about these two women. He looked at her and said, Get up. Let's go. The car is still waiting at the door. Since the butler was going as well, John Anderson got someone to arrange a business car for him. The butler sat in the front seat, affectionately sat in the second row, and John Anderson and Helen Anderson sat in the back. Along the way, Helen Anderson's cold eyes kept darting back and forth on her. But she didn't care about her. Arriving at the entrance of the shopping mall, John Anderson said, Laura, there will be a reporter secretly taking photos with you later. You should behave a little more naturally. No one wants to close the deal with you earlier than I do, so you don't need to tell me. She got out of the car. The butler was right beside her. After Helen Anderson got off the car, although she was unwilling, she still walked to her side and took her arm. It was the first time that Laura was so close to her. Helen Anderson's body was covered in a thick perfume that made her feel a pungent smell. However, the play still had to be acted out. Helen Anderson gave her a fake smile and said, Let's go, Laura. Auntie will go buy some clothes for you. A smile appeared on her face. Thank you, Auntie. Seeing this smile, John Anderson felt even more uneasy. The three of them walked into the mall and looked at a few pieces of ladies' clothing. With a kind face, she picked up a few pieces and compared them to her body. However, she indicated that she didn't really like them. She walked straight in until she reached the door of an inconspicuous boutique in the corner. This time, without waiting for Helen Anderson to pick it out for her, she let the woman in charge to take out the suit from the display case. Holding the suit, she turned around and looked at Helen Anderson with a smile. Auntie, I like this one. Helen Anderson, who had her back facing the reporter, grit her teeth and said in a low voice, This outfit doesn't suit you. How could that be? Auntie, I feel that this is very suitable for me. She went into the fitting room and changed her clothes. When she came out, she didn't ask about Helen Anderson, but looked at the woman in charge of the counter instead. How is it? Is it suitable for me? It's too suitable. This set of clothes is simply tailored for little miss. She walked to the side, picked up a few random clothes, and handed them to the mistress. My auntie brought me here to buy clothes for me. If I pick a few more, she'll be angry, so I'll take these. Okay. Please wait a moment, miss. Laura smiled at the mistress, then returned to the locker room and changed clothes. The mistress happily went to pack the clothes. Helen Anderson grit her teeth and gave a fake smile, reluctantly handing the card to the mistress. Settling the bill, she spent a total of $1.1 million. She clasped her hands together in gratitude. Auntie, so much. I've let you spend so much. It's fine, as long as you're happy. The few of them went out while the butler snickered behind them. As for Helen Anderson and John Anderson, they could only bear with it. She had come to this shop with William Walton before and bought a set of formal attire. Therefore, she knew that the clothes in this shop were worth no less than $100,000. In particular, the clothes in the glass case were all priced at over $500,000. They made her unhappy, and they couldn't get away with it. She took a walk around and went to buy shoes and a bag. Only after spending $2,400,000 of Anderson family did she give up. This was the first time in her life that she had been this crazy, but she was willing. Strolling around the streets, the few of them returned home. Getting on the car, the moment the car door closed, Helen Anderson angrily scolded. Laura, are you crazy? Why should I spend 2 million yuan to buy clothes for you? You want to take advantage of me. There's no such thing as useless gain in this world. If you want to get it, you will have to pay for it. Auntie, why bother with it? Helen Anderson was furious. You shut up. Who's your aunt? Helen Anderson. This is the reward that you have to pay if you want to play a good person card. Helen Anderson looked coldly at John Anderson, who was beside her. John Anderson immediately said to her, Laura, you spend too much money. The Anderson family is currently in need of money. That's your problem, not something I should think about. How the Anderson family is doing has nothing to do with me. She looked at the butler and asked, The butler, how do you feel about the clothes that I bought today? Miss Walton, your clothes are very beautiful. She smiled. Thank you. Helen Anderson angrily punched John Anderson. John Anderson was helpless. When the car was almost reaching the White House, the butler received a call from William Walton. He turned around and gave the phone to Laura. Miss Walton, Mr. Walton said that he called you, but no one answered. Did you mute it? She was awkward. She had muted her voice, so she didn't want to answer his phone. However, this man really knew how to pick a time. Helen Anderson and John Anderson were both present. It was really impossible for her to refuse this call. She took the phone and put it by her ear. Hello? William Walton gently asked. How is it today? Is breakfast good? Yes. Did you miss me? Why would she miss a man who betrayed her? She did her best to not let the two people behind her hear her emotions. No. But I missed you a lot. William Walton had already thought of her answer, but he wasn't discouraged. Her face turned red for no reason. If you have nothing else, hang up quickly. It's not convenient for me here. What? That couple is still here? Yes. Then why don't you take this opportunity to tell them our relationship is very good? She snorted in her heart. She didn't want it. As the car drove into the Anderson family compound, she said, We're here. I won't tell you anymore. She hung up and handed the phone back to the butler before getting off the car. It was just time for lunch. Nick Anderson, who rarely went to eat lunch at home, also returned. Just as Laura was about to go upstairs, she heard John Anderson say, Laura, let's have lunch downstairs today. I have something to announce. After a moment of hesitation, she went upstairs and said, John Anderson said to his wife, Go and get Betty Anderson. Helen Anderson looked at John Anderson coldly. What are you trying to do? You clearly know that Betty Anderson does not wish to see that woman, but you still? I have my own plans. There are some things that should be done as soon as possible. Helen Anderson snorted coldly, turned around and entered the room. John Anderson said to Nick Anderson, Nick, go and persuade your sister so that she won't get too excited. We're all family. Why would we? Dad, Betty Anderson has never been someone who I can reason with. After Nick Anderson finished, he walked to the side of the sofa and sat down. John Anderson sighed helplessly. Not a single person in this family was able to listen to his commands. Thinking about it, his life really did seem like a joke. When she came, the dishes on the table had already been set up. Seeing her, Nick Anderson stood up from the sofa and looked at her. Looking at him, she turned her gaze away and walked to the table. She looked at John Anderson. Aren't you going to eat? Let's end this quickly. As she spoke, she pulled out the outermost chair and sat down. John Anderson and Nick Anderson walked over together. Nick Anderson sat across from her. She lowered her eyes and did not meet his gaze. Not long later, Helen Anderson came over and sat down with a cold expression. John Anderson looked at his servant. Where is Betty Anderson? The aunt said. Eldest miss might have to wait a little longer. John Anderson's calm face fell. Then she picked up her fork and began to eat. Helen Anderson snorted coldly. That woman didn't teach you. Even if the elder doesn't touch the fork, the junior still can't? She said, Elder? Only those who were worthy of being respected could be considered elders. Some people were merely old and disrespectful. Furthermore, my mom only taught me how to be respectful and orderly. It's a junior, not an elder. Upon hearing the ridicule of Betty Anderson, Helen Anderson anxiously said, Laura, don't think that just because you're allowed to live here, we will accept you. If you want to become my Anderson family, you are not qualified. Fortunately, you will not accept me. I would instead feel so disgusted that I would vomit if you accept me. I don't want to be in cahoots with you Anderson family. And also, the current me is Miss Walton of the Walton family. Who do you think would still want to be an Anderson family? Her words made Helen Anderson roll her eyes in anger. She tilted her head towards John Anderson. John Anderson, look at this good daughter of yours. Nick Anderson muttered, Mom, stop talking. Are you going to let us eat or not? Helen Anderson swept the bowl in front of her to the ground. Eat? How could I eat? With her here, how can we eat peacefully in this house? Let me tell you, don't think that you can be arrogant just because you have Walton family backing you. How could I dare to be arrogant in front of the Anderson family? It is said that when the Anderson family gets up and dares to kill people, I am timid and really cherish my life. Hearing her words, Nick Anderson's expression froze. He turned to look at her. Who told you to say these nonsenses in front of me? She did not dare to look into Nick Anderson's eyes and said softly, I heard about it. Laura. Nick Anderson's voice also became somewhat colder. Who said it? Behind her, the butler said calmly. Mr. Anderson, these words came from our third master. If there are any problems, you can go and find our third master. You shut up, Nick Anderson said as he looked at the butler coldly. You are just a servant, and a servant of the Walton family. Since this place is the Anderson family, you don't have the right to speak. Hearing Nick Anderson's words, she slapped the table and stood up gently in displeasure. Enough. Is it that your Anderson family has humiliated others and addicted to it? Listen up, no matter whose family the butler is from, he's on my side right now, and is one of my close friends. You can't humiliate him. Nick Anderson looked up at her with fury in his eyes. Laura had a stubborn expression as she lowered her head to look him in the eye. The butler was protecting her, so the person Nick Anderson was currently fierce towards was not the butler, but her. The two of them were in a stalemate, while Betty Anderson wobbled down the stairs. With a look of contempt, she looked at her with disdain. Laura, you sure are capable. To be able to cause such a ruckus in such a peaceful home, what an amazing show. She raised her eyes and said, You flatter me? Nick Anderson said coldly. Laura, are you being praised? She looked at him. What else? Instead, she questioned, this stinking family has already become a peaceful family in her mouth. So why can't I think that she is praising my ability? Or do you think it's more appropriate for me to throw down my fork and fight with the person who humiliated me? As she spoke, she tossed the fork onto the table. It was not as if Betty Anderson had never seen someone act in such a manner before, which was why she hurriedly took 2 steps back. What are you doing? Don't think that I'm afraid of you. Let me tell you, even if you have this old man's help right now, there are only 2 of you. John Anderson shook his head and shouted angrily. Enough! Have all of you made enough trouble? How long do you want to continue making trouble? Is this still a home? Aren't you tired? Huh? As she sat down, she did not care about John Anderson's emotions at all. We can't eat anymore. Don't you have something to say? Don't waste everyone's time, just say it. John Anderson calmed his emotions and said to Betty Anderson, Betty, you should also sit. Betty Anderson snorted, walked to the side of Helen Anderson and sat down. John Anderson said, since Laura has already returned. I plan to hold a press conference and make her be recognized. No, I don't agree. The 4 people in front of him spoke in unison. John Anderson didn't even have time to be surprised. He only heard Helen Anderson yell, I agree that you should bring her back home. That is already the bottom line. John Anderson, don't push your luck here. If you anger me, I will chase you out of the Anderson family. Betty Anderson also stomped her feet. That's right. What right does she have? This Anderson family is my grandfather's. Who does she think she is? On equal footing with me? What right do you have to steal my Anderson family's property? John Anderson looked at her. I can understand even if others don't agree. But why do you oppose it? Don't you know that I also need a lot of courage to accept you? Then please withdraw your courage, Mr. Anderson. I don't need it, John Anderson said unhappily. Laura, you better not know what's good for you. You're right, I just don't know what's good for me. Hey, was I just born today? I'm already 22 years old and only now people say that they want me to recognize their ancestors? Don't you think that's funny? What have you been doing? What did you say when my mother came to hand me over to you? John Anderson lowered his eyes and did not make a sound. As she thought of the past, she felt bitter in her heart. You said that I'm a bastard. You don't have a daughter like me. You want me go as far as we can. What happened in the past is already in the past. Don't tell me that you want to hate me for the rest of my life just because of those angry words of mine. That's right. I will hate you for the rest of my life. And furthermore, you don't have the qualifications to make me recognize you as my ancestor. You already forgot about your own ancestors. So stop scolding me. John Anderson looked at her coldly. Did this child really have to rub salt in his wound? With that, she stood up and looked at Helen Anderson, Betty Anderson. Don't worry. All of you don't want to accept me. I similarly don't want to openly be kin with all of you. She turned around and left the dining table. As she went upstairs, she said to the butler, Butler, I'm going back to my room to eat. All right, Miss Walton. Not long later, the butler served lunch. After the butler set up lunch on the table, he left first. The butler, there are 2 things I need your help with. Miss Walton only needs to give instructions. Can I trouble you to find time to help me withdraw the dresses I bought today? Retreat? The butler was confused by her words. I just want Helen Anderson to spend the money to make her angry. Since I've already achieved my goal, I can just return the money back and put it in my bank card. As she said that, she took out a card and gave it to the butler. The butler took it and nodded. Okay, what's the other matter? She scratched between her brows. About that. It's exactly what happened downstairs just now. I hope you can keep it a secret and don't tell William Walton about it. The butler did not understand. I was afraid that William Walton would misunderstand and think that I had rejected the Anderson family because of him. Actually, I am not. I rejected him because I hated the Anderson family. When the butler heard this, he could not help but laugh. Okay. I understand, Miss Walton. I will head out first. If you need anything later, just call for me. She nodded. After the butler left the room, he could not help but smile. Miss Walton did it on purpose. It seemed like the third master's worries were unnecessary, as the Miss Walton clearly cared about him. After dinner, she didn't even want to leave her room. Fortunately, before William Walton sent her over, he had explained it to him that she was going to stay here for only 7 days. If he let her stay here for too long, she would probably go crazy. She opened her cell phone and searched through a set of research questions. Not long later, her phone rang. Seeing that it was Betty Anderson, she picked up the phone and spoke with a strong voice. What do you want to say now? Laura, there's something I'm quite curious about. I'd like to ask you for your advice. Hearing Betty Anderson's forced voice, she could not help but frown. What was this woman holding back? Betty Anderson, stop scheming in front of me. How would I dare? After all, you have so many men backing you up. This was the first time Betty Anderson had spoken to her with such a gentle voice since they had met each other. But exactly because of this, she knew how strange the current Betty Anderson was. As expected, Betty Anderson continued. I especially want to know how exactly do you make those men willingly submit to you? Nut job. Just as she was about to hang up, she heard Betty Anderson say again. It's fine if there's a Mr. Walton that's completely captivated by you, but there's actually a Nick Anderson who wants to do anything for you. You're capable. Listening up to here, Laura finally understood what Betty Anderson knew. William Walton had once said that, with Betty Anderson's IQ, if she found out some secret about someone else, she wouldn't save them. Tell me, if Lord Third knew that you and my brother exchanged glances like that every day, what would he think? She smiled coldly. After Betty Anderson heard this voice, she could not help but snort. Laura? You still dare to smile? Now, the person who is holding on to the opponent's secret is me. I know of your secret with Nick Anderson. I can make you lose everything you have just now. As far as I know, no man can accept his own woman cheating. You make sense. Then you just have to go and complain to William Walton. I want to see if he will listen to you and divorce me. You. Oh, that's right. On the side, I'll answer your question just now. Actually, the answer is extremely simple. Having a beautiful mother, then the mother will give you a beautiful face that you don't need to do a surgery. Of course this answer, a fake face like your will never understand. She hung up. Several rooms away, there was a scream. Immediately after, the sounds of the butler's arguments against Betty Anderson could be heard from the door. Laura, just you wait. I will definitely not let you get away with this. I will make you lose everything. She ignored the voice and picked up her phone to continue reading. She would definitely not be happy if she stayed in the Anderson family for the next few days. In the evening, she finished 2 sets of questions. She lay in bed and closed her eyes for a moment. Not long later, she picked up her phone and called Judy. Hearing Judy's voice, she asked, Are you outside? That's right, I'm out shopping by myself. It's so boring. Come out and accompany me for a stroll. All right, where are you? I'll go look for you. Is that really possible? I'm on the old pedestrian street. I'll go to the coffee shop and wait for you. All right, we'll arrive at the battlefield in 15 minutes. Understood. Getting off the bed, she quickly changed and left the room. The butler, I'm going to gather with my good friend. Okay, Miss Walton, I will arrange a carriage for you. In less than 15 minutes, she managed to find Judy in the coffee shop. Judy excitedly pulled her down and said, I asked for a cup of fresh milk for you. How about that? Are you being bullied over there? No. He told the butler to follow me there. He is very reliable. Judy moved closer and laughed wickedly. It's William Walton who is reliable, okay? She took a sip from her cup and shook her head. Judy, William Walton and I. We may have to separate. Judy became anxious. Don't. I feel that Mr. Walton is really good to you, but this time he knows that you are wrong. He has always been trying to make up for it, Laura. In this life, it is not easy for people to meet someone who truly loves you. Can you not think too much? In the past, I also thought that way. It was only after he did something that I could not understand or forgive. I finally understood that the person he loved was not me. What's the matter? It's so serious. She shook her head and said with a smile, I don't want to give you any negative emotions. Don't. I see that you all are like this. I really feel very uncomfortable in my heart, and I hope that you can be happy. When I saw you with Mr. Walton before, and the happiness that was overflowing from your face, I really felt that you had met the right person. Now that you said you wanted to separate from him, I was really afraid that you would regret it in the future. She smiled. You know that I will never regret any decision I make. But, Judy said helplessly, this is probably the only time in your life that he'll truly love you. Do you want to miss it and regret it for the rest of your life? If it was true love, there wouldn't be such an accident. So, what exactly did Mr. Walton do? Tell me, or else I really won't be able to understand it. Thinking about it, he looked at her. Actually, the person who exposed my identity was not William Walton at all. Not him? Then who is it? Judy was completely confused. I don't think Mr. Walton is someone who would take the blame for others. Moreover, he said it himself, so how could it be fake? When the news was just released, I was also very confused. William Walton understood me well enough. He knows where my bottom line is, so he shouldn't be so easily touched. It wasn't until that day, when I received a call from her Carol Wright, that I found out that he had actually taken the blame for his Carol Wright. But why? I have never told you before, but actually, before his Carol Wright got married, they had a relationship. What? Judy almost jumped up. She put her hand to her lips. Shh, be quiet. Judy sat down and leaned in front of her. Are you for real? If it's like this, then this William Walton is really too unreliable. I actually trusted him that much. She held the cup tenderly with both hands. I hope it's fake too. Then I'll support you, Laura. There are many scum men in this world, but we can't just not know that they are scum. Yet we still have to be wronged and deceive ourselves. Anyway, I'm on your side. She looked at Judy and could not help but laugh. This girl, she was just speaking up for William Walton just now, and now she was changing the topic? But, Laura, if you were to separate from him, would you really feel sad? What about the child? Her hand rested on the table, gently massaging the space between her eyebrows. How could she not be sad? Judy, did you know? Today, John Anderson wanted me to recognize my ancestors, but I rejected him without even thinking. Second, it's also because I know that the Walton family has enmity with the Anderson family. If I really become the Anderson family, then William Walton and I will truly be the enemies of the Walton family. Therefore you love him so much this time, Judy said as she held her hand. If we really separate, I'm afraid you will be the one feeling the most upset. With her other hand, she gently caressed her lower abdomen. If it wasn't for this incident that crossed my bottom line, I really didn't want my child to be born unable to live a healthy family. I also hoped that she would be able to live a different life from me and grow up in a family full of love. Laura. Judy pouted and felt sad as well. She pursed her lips. But, for some things, how could it be possible for things to be so smooth sailing? The heavens might especially favor me, so the tests that they give me are also more than others. Judy promised sincerely. It's all right, I will raise this child with you. After all, I am her godmother. Then I will thank you for Wall. What are you thanking me for? We're all family. In order to prevent Judy from being in a bad mood, he suggested that they go for a walk. The two of them held hands, strolling around and eating like they did in school. When it was close to evening, they were full. Just as she was about to watch a movie, her cell phone rang. She took out her phone to see that it was William Walton. She put the phone back into her bag. Judy asked, "Who is it?" Shrugging her shoulders, she did not make a sound. Judy asked, "William Walton? Does he still have the nerve to call you?" Holding her arm, she asked, "What kind of movie would you like to watch?" "I'll treat you. Anything is fine, if it doesn't work. Let's just watch a cartoon and treat it as teaching the child in advance. Who would teach a fetus like that? Why not? Let's just do it. Let's go." They walked into the mall arm in arm. When Laura and Judy arrived at the cinema, she went to queue up to buy tickets, while Judy went to buy popcorn. As they were lining up, someone in the queue took a photo with their cell phone. She turned her head away uncomfortably and turned her back to the man. The person behind her muttered to her boyfriend, "Hey, look, isn't this Mr. Walton's wife?" The man looked around. "Why didn't I see her?" She is. You must be mistaken. How could that be? I've been watching the news every day for the past 2 days. If you don't believe me, look at the pictures I've taken. Then, her boyfriend said with some surprise, "It's true." The discussion between these two people wasn't quiet. Someone beside them cast their gaze towards her. The man standing in line in front of her also couldn't help but turn his head to look at her. She felt ashamed from the bottom of her heart. With how pretty she is, her mother definitely isn't ugly either. This mother and daughter pair both have means. 20 years ago, Anderson Group was one of the top businesses in Philadelphia, and now, Walton Group is the boss of Philadelphia. So capable. Laura turned around and coldly looked at the woman. "Miss, do you know my mother and me?" "And just talk about it here." The woman felt embarrassed and retorted, "You can do it, but why can't we talk about it?" "So, can I too be pointed at you, and scolded you because I feel that you're ugly, because I'm the same as everyone else, because of my aesthetics? Who are you scolding?" The woman was furious. How was she ugly? Indeed. You should know that you would be displeased to be framed, right? Who framed you? Go take a look online if you don't believe me. That's what everyone said. Your mom and you are both venomous women, so you can hook a man's soul. She clenched her fists. She could endure being insulted, but she could not humiliate her mother. She was about to argue with her when she heard a familiar, cold voice behind her. "Miss, do you know that slander is illegal?" After turning around, the surrounding people automatically scattered. William Walton seemed to have brought his own halo as he walked in from outside the crowd. When she saw William Walton, she couldn't believe it. Why was he here? Did he use her phone to find her again? Hey, but... Again. Ever since she met him, he had appeared whenever she was in a predicament. As William Walton spoke, he had already arrived by her side and naturally wrapped his arms around her shoulders. He looked at the woman in front of him with a pair of sharp eyes. The woman lowered her eyes nervously and nudged the man beside her. The man didn't dare to say anything. William Walton said, "Young miss, prepare to receive our lawyer's letter." The woman quickly said, "Mr. Walton, I'm sorry. I was in the wrong. I will not speak nonsense ever again." William Walton refused to forgive her. "When you were angry at my wife just now, you didn't look this miserable. But just now your wife also scolded me for being ugly. She was telling the truth, but you slandered her and my mother-in-law." After William Walton finished speaking, he looked over at Laura and asked. She looked at him, then lowered her eyes and nodded. At this time, Judy, who had finished buying the popcorn, squeezed into the crowd. Seeing William Walton present, her face was filled with displeasure. After she said that, William Walton came to her side. "Laura, what's the situation?" She whispered something in her ear. Judy stuffed the popcorn into her hands and walked in front of the woman. "Hey, woman, what right do you have to insult people you don't know with your mouth full of dung? I know better than you what kind of person Laura is. What you said just now was clearly slander, and slander is a form of imprisonment. Please immediately apologize to my friend." The woman was flustered. Who was this person? She and her boyfriend looked at each other, then walked over to each other with a face full of piety and said, "Miss Green, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I shouldn't be so arrogant. I won't dare to do it again. I'm just an ordinary person. I still need to work and live. Can I beg you to let me go?" Beside her, the man also hurried over, saying, "I'm sorry," she said with a cold expression. "I am not a public figure and am not willing to accept your criticism. The rumors you have speculated about have affected my life and made me feel guilty towards my mother. So I cannot tell you that it's all right. I will not forgive you for your slander, but I also do not wish to ruin a person's future because of my emotions. Therefore I will." Laura did not make a sound. She pulled Judy along and left. Walking to the cinema's door, Judy said unhappily, Laura, why should we go? We're also here to watch movies and we didn't do anything shameful." She looked at her and said, "All right, sorry." Judy pouted her mouth gloomily. She turned her head to look at William Walton and said with a cold face, "What are you doing here? Do you think you haven't added enough trouble to Laura?" Hearing Judy's words, William Walton could feel the deep disdain in her tone. One had to know that Judy had been urging him to come and see her. "You're saying that I added to Laura?" Hearing William Walton's tone, Laura was a little worried that he would attack Judy. After all, he had been extremely malicious towards everyone. She quickly turned around and said to Judy, "Judy, I thought you wanted to watch a movie. Go buy a ticket, I'll come look for you in a bit." Judy also didn't want to talk to someone like William Walton anymore, so she simply shot him a glance and turned to go buy a ticket. William Walton looked at her. What did Judy mean just now? Did I do something wrong again? Why are you here? she asked instead of answering him. When William Walton heard her tone and saw her attitude, he knew that she was still very angry at him. He smiled. Why didn't you pick up the phone just now? I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it, but you saw it. She looked at him, puzzled. Didn't you just take a look and throw the phone into your bag? This is clearly refusing my call. Hearing this, she understood what was going on. You were following me just now? The butler said that you and Judy were at the walking street, and coincidentally, I had nothing better to do, so I came to look for you guys. It could be that we were fated to meet each other. So as soon as I walked into the walking street, I saw you. If it was in the past, she would definitely be moved by these words. But now, she wasn't moved at all. She only felt that. He was glib with her. I'm going to the movies with her. If there's nothing else, you can go back. Saying that, she turned around and was about to enter the cinema. William Walton pulled her wrist, pulling her into his embrace. Struggling with her emotions for a while, William Walton whispered into her ear. Aren't you afraid that others will point at us when they see us arguing? She was displeased, she said. Who's arguing with you? You didn't argue with me, you were just making things difficult for me. William Walton, let go of me. Do not hug me in public. Then, invite me to the movies with you. As long as you invite me, I'll let you go. She turned her head and stared at his profile. I don't. If you invite me, I won't go with you. That should be fine, right? I said, I'm not. On the other hand, William Walton secretly smiled in joy. Looks like you really do like to hug me. Then just continue hugging for a while. William Walton, you. She felt that this man couldn't be more shameless. She suppressed the anger in her heart. Do you want to watch a movie with us? As expected, William Walton released her. He only looked at her with a smile. Since you have invited me, I will accept. You. Seeing that she was annoyed again, William Walton rubbed her head. I'm just teasing you. Don't worry, I will definitely do what I promised you. Next time I call you, pick it up. After a moment of silence, she turned and walked into the cinema. She wouldn't promise to do what she could not. Seeing that she had returned, William Walton shook his head, then went downstairs and left. Before he left, he sent Judy a message. Judy, after the movie, please come and find me. I have something to confirm. Judy twitched his mouth when he received the message. Idiot, I'm not going to see you. She replied, I'm busy. Very quickly, William Walton's text message was sent over. I sincerely invite you to my office at 5 p.m. It would be better to tear down 10 temples than to ruin a marriage. If you really are doing this for the sake of Laura and the good of a child, then you will know what you must do.